So wonderful to see so many of you with us today. My name is Lily Wolf. I'm the New Works Associate at Chautauqua Theater Company, and I'm thrilled to introduce our speakers today. We have with us discussing Theater of Testimony, Emily Mann, director. I can tell you've seen the show. And we have Emily with us just for another hour or so before you're off to where next, Emily?
Home.
I'm going to share a little bit about each of them just now, and I am both intimidated and just thrilled, honored, excited to get to share this incredible bio with you about Emily Mann. Emily is a Tony-nominated director and playwright, and a Tony Award-winning artistic director. In her 30 years as artistic director and resident playwright at Ricardo Theater Center in Princeton, New Jersey, she wrote 15 new plays and adaptations, directed over 50 productions, produced 180 plays and musicals, and supported and directed the works of emerging and legendary playwrights, including Ntozake Shange, Athol Fugard, Edward Albee, Christopher Durang, Nilo Cruz, Joyce Carol Oates, Terrell Alvin McCraney, and Denai Guerrera, and is celebrated for her productions of Williams, Lorca, Chekhov, and Shakespeare. We haven't even gotten to Broadway yet. On Broadway, she directed her own plays, Execution of Justice, and Nilo Cruz's Anna in the Tropics, and A Streetcar Named Desire. Her other plays include Still Life, Anula, an autobiography, Greensboro, Meshuggah, Mrs. Packard, Gloria and Life, which aired on PBS, Great Performances, and The Pianist, the play with music. I'm going to turn the page. Her adaptations include Baby Doll, Scenes from a Married Uncle Vanya, The Cherry Orchard, A Seagull in the Hamptons, The House of Bernarda Alba, and Antigone. She recently premiered on Cedar Street, a new musical co-written with Lucy Simon, Carmel Dean, and Susan Birkenhead. Okay, now the awards. Are you ready? Awards include Peabody, Guggenheim, Hull Warner, NAACP, 6 Obies, Drama Desk, Outer Critics Circle, Writers Guild of America nominations, Princeton University Honorary Doctorate of Arts, Helen Merrill Distinguished Playwrights Award, Margot Jones Award, TCG Visionary Leadership Award, the Lilly Award, and Gordon Davidson Awards, both for Lifetime Achievement in Theater. She has recently received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Dramatists Guild in Playwriting and is a proud member of the Dramatists Guild Council. She has been inducted into the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the American Theater Hall of Fame. She has just completed writing a new play, Code Red, due for production in the coming year. And that is that. Our other two guests today are Jade King Carroll, is no stranger to you, producing artistic director of Chautauqua Theater. Jade is a lifetime mentee of Emily Mann. She was her associate on Streetcar Named Desire on Broadway, and has directed several of her plays, Having Our Say and Still Life. And is also here today as an expert in verbatim theater, having also worked with Anna Devere Smith. And then we have Kavan Harvey. Kavan is one of our Drama League Future Now directing fellows at Chautauqua Theater Company this summer, and was the assistant director on Execution of Justice. Let's get to some questions, shall we? So last night, Execution of Justice opened, and we have all, if we haven't previously, gotten a little taste of Theater of Testimony, which is what we're here to talk about today. This is a collaborative question for all of you. I'd love to start with Emily. Can you tell us a little about what is theater of testimony, a form of documentary theater related to verbatim theater, but not exactly the same? Get a little nerdy with us. What are we talking about?
Absolutely. Verbatim theater is basically taking every and stumble of what someone has said from whatever source you're taking it from, whether it is a transcript of a trial or an interview or anything like that. And then people collage that and make that into a play, and that is called verbatim theater. Theater of testimony is somewhat different, and it was named that by my dear friends Athol Fugard, Barney Simon, and Emily Mann from South Africa, who saw my play Still Life, which Jay brilliantly directed, and said, oh, you do what we do, taking the words of people and letting people testify as to what is going on in their lives. That is a form of South African theater that basically brings the stories of Black and colored people out of the townships into the town square for the community to discuss. And I was very honored that they put me into their realm of theater, which is about testifying and as an art form. Not to put down my colleagues who do verbatim theater, but they make no pretense of it being an art form. I take the words of real people, boil them down, add a point of view, a rhythm, and a frame that makes for actually an old-fashioned, well-fashioned play in 3 acts in Aristotelian form. And I'm also, having been highly trained in Shakespeare and classical theater, I break it down into a form of iambic pentameter and poetry so that the entire play lifts into heightened language and heightened rhythm. So if you come, I hope you will notice that this cast is crushing it. They absolutely know how to lift this into the form I so dearly cherish.
Thank you, and you touched a little bit on this in terms of how you work, but can we break that down even more? What is the writing process like, and how does it differ when you're working outside of the form of theater of testimony?
That's such a good question, and each play is different. Each play that I have made or written in documentary or theater of testimony form has asked for its own form. So, for example, my first play, which was called Anula, an autobiography about a Holocaust survivor, was sort of easy for me to figure out because I was interviewing her in her own kitchen while she was making chicken soup for her sister. And so I wanted the audience to have the same experience I had, which was life-changing. I never do a play unless the story has changed my life in some way, and I want to share it with you. So with Anula, I put the play on stage. It was a kitchen. She was actually making chicken soup. And for those of you who have learned a lot in your lives by sitting in kitchens with elders, you know the smell and the process of being in the kitchen with a wise elder, right? Also, she was very, very funny. And so I put it in a kitchen. We had chicken soup every night. When I did it at the Guthrie, we ate the chicken soup as an audience. So it was always immersive theater. But when I did a play called Still Life, where it's a 3-character play, a Vietnam vet, his wife, and his lover. She came with one of my best friends to the Guthrie, saw the play, came to me and said, I want you to meet my friend. He is a survivor also of the war, Vietnam War, and he needs to tell his story, which I have to say, another thing is when I find that I'm scared of a project and I'm resisting it, that's usually the one I have to do. So after often saying, you know, the Vietnam War tore my family apart, tore this country apart, I don't know if I'm ready for another war story, he came to see me and started to spill his guts to me. And after much internal strife, I agreed to work with him and his wife and my friend's friend. And I had hours and hours and hours and hours of transcript. And I wanted to figure out how to tell their story because I thought it mattered to the country. At that point, the country was still deeply divided over the Vietnam War. And families were deeply divided over the Vietnam War. And I wanted to convince my father, who had decided it was a necessary war, and I disagreed with him. I needed him to see this play, because here was a vet who could say this was wrong on every level. And I destroyed my life and the lives of many people. And so I worked on that play, put it into a workshop at the Guthrie where I was still an apprentice, and 3 fantastic actors read it to me. And then a friend of mine said, why do you have a series of monologues? Why is it in this order? And the light bulb went off, and I suddenly realized that they were actually talking to each other. And I discovered the technique that our cast is working with now, which is simultaneity and intercut monologues that chime with and inform the other realities. And so, staying up for almost 2 weeks straight, I then, before computers, had chopped it all up, and like a film editor had it scotch taped each shred on the walls, and began to make that, and then had a reading with friends, and it exploded. But I discovered it by doing it. I don't want to bore you with all of each and every play, but Execution of Justice came out of that because Oscar Eustace, who's now our artistic director at the Public Theater in New York, was the artistic director of the Eureka Theater with a man named Tony Taccone, who then went on to become artistic director of Berkeley Rep. They were doing my play, Still Life, and invited me out to San Francisco, and I said, I can't see this play again, it just rips me apart. And then they started to talk to me, and it was the most brilliant analysis of the play I'd ever heard, and at this point it was all being done all over the country. So I agreed to go. They asked if I would write them a play for their company. And I said I would if it were about their community. And I was taking a cab ride back from a performance of Still Life when I asked the cab driver, what's the most important thing that has happened? What event in San Francisco has most marked you? And he said it was the assassinations of Harvey Milk and George Moscone. And he said he would remember that like he would remember where he had been when Martin Luther King had been killed, or when JFK had been killed. And he said it was an unhealed wound in the community. And I thought, why I am drawn to unhealed wounds. I need to sort of lie down on a couch for a long time to figure that out. But that's what started that one. And there was a long process to get it to the point where it is now. I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to go through it.
They always ask great questions, so I'm sure it'll come back to you from here. We have 3 directors up here with us today. I'm curious, Kavan and Jade, to hear, we were talking about beginnings, how things begin. How did you enter this form? What was your first exposure to it? And what grabbed you, what compels you about working inside this form as directors?
For me, well, I feel like I've had the privilege of like living in a world that Emily created in a way. I've always lived in a world of documentary theater, seeing and hearing the fires in the mirror when I was a child. I grew up in Crown Heights for a time, so to see the community that I was part of actually on stage was life-changing for me. And as an actor, in my past life as an actor, I was in a show called Dispatches from a Men in America. Some friends of mine went basically along the route of the Freedom Riders after Obama was elected and did interviews with people talking about their feelings about Obama and the election and what life was like in 2008. So that was one of my first direct experience working with theater of testimony.
Thank you. You know, a direct experience, what draws me to it?
Yes, how were you first exposed to it and what draws you to it?
I believe my first exposure to it was Having Our Say in 1993, 94, which was Emily Mann's beautiful play based on the Delaney sisters, who are 101 and 103. And it was at McCarter, and then it went to Broadway, and my father wrote the music. And back then, you would write the music for like 6-8 months before you even went into rehearsal, and you went into a studio with live musicians, and it's like a whole different process. And my bedroom was against my dad's studio. So for like a year before I got to see the show, I heard the rhythms of the world he was creating, and it's 100 years of American history, so that kind of music. And then I went and I got to go to Tech and meet the sisters, and watch the story, and then meet Mary Alice and Gloria Foster, and then sit in on Tech. So I was seeing both the creation of how the theater was made, meeting the people that it was based on, and seeing the process of something succeed and then get celebrated and moved. So my first experience was exceptional. And then 20 years later, I directed Having Our Say. And in the interim, I had seen a lot of Emily's, I've seen something that you directed, at least one show every year of my life. Yeah, for 40 years. So I had been exposed in that way and been in that conversation. And when I was at Second Stage, I was on the artistic staff at Let Me Down Easy with Anna Devere Smith, which is a completely different, she follows like the breath and the ums and the ahs, a different way in, but a very, I would say, cousins as far as storytelling. And I had already had some experience, so I got to kind of stand on my own in it. And then a couple years later, I directed Having Her Say and then Still Life. And so it's a form that I'm attracted to, obviously, programming, execution of justice. And I think all theater is about finding the truth, excavating the truth, and this is kind of, in my view, a direct line to that.
Thank you, and for all of you, Emily, you write and direct theater testimony, obviously. Do you approach that process as a director any differently for a verbatim or theater testimony piece than you do, say, Streetcar Named Desire or Theater
Well, there are
Beyond
a
the
couple
Heart?
of differences. One is I've only directed documentary theater or theater of testimony that I created. So it's directing my own work, which is different. I know every single syllable of, I'm looking at my task now, every single syllable of the play, every single rhythm of the play, and what I had envisioned. And through many productions, have honed to exactly what I want. And that's what you will see if you go. This is the production I want of this play.
They're just all crying up here. If you're sitting behind, they're just...
In terms of directing, I only direct plays that I'm passionate about. And say Streetcar Named Desire, which I'm passionate about. And I knew Tennessee, so I also feel that you even if that playwright has passed, you need to know about them to truly understand the work that's on the stage. So let's put it that way. I want to feel when I go in as a director that I have so internalized what that playwright means and wants to express in that play that it's as if I'd written it myself. When I was younger, I used to type it out so that I could own it on a certain level, but that's because I'm a writer. You know, that's a way to absorb it. And then how I work with the actors is to share that and to find out, because I love actors. I started out as an actor, and I greatly admire actors because there's a reason I'm not an actress. To get out of them, for example, if it's Blanche, I did it with Nicole Ari Parker. Who is Nicole's Blanche? Who is Blair Underwood's Stanley? In terms of the writing on the page and what Tennessee wanted, but also in terms of how we can, in a way, reinvent his play without the original cast being ghosts informing it. Now, Blair Underwood can't be Marlon Brando, right? He doesn't look like Marlon Brando, he doesn't sound like Marlon Brando, and it would be inauthentic for Blair to, and many actors are asked to basically copy Marlon Brando's performance. No, not interesting to me, and not to an audience either. So it's about finding where the character lives. So I would say the process is very much the same. Depending, I mean, verbatim work is not poetry. I hope that my documentary plays and theater of testimony plays are poetry. Tennessee plays are all poetry. So it's heightened language, and each one asks for something else. So as a director, I bring my knowledge as a writer and an actor to it.
Thank you. Absolutely. Sure. I want to write everything down. Jade, as we all know, this production features all of our acting conservatory members. Was there something, you know, from a pedagogical perspective about working inside this form, working with Emily, that you felt would ignite their experience here?
Everything about it. Truly, I mean, the conservatory, and Emily have heard me say this 1,000 times, but I feel so blessed to have a mentor of so committed and who I know so well and for so long, who's given me so much artistically and inspired so much and taught me so much. So to be able to give that to the conservatory, to pass that forward, pay it forward, so to speak, was something that immediately excited me to have to share that. To have a conversation about a play that is also in the moment, what that is. It can be heavy, but I think it's a good bridging lesson to do important work. I mean, all work is important work. I'm not trying to be pretentious, but work that's speaking to the moment right now, politically, that's in conversation with where we are. To be able to work with a playwright in the room. I know Emily to be generous and to come at, I've never known you to come at anything as a museum piece. So to have a director who is going to come at something like a new piece of work, even though it's 40 years old, I thought was also a wonderful experience for the conservatory. I can go on and on. But yeah, there was so many things that I just went, oh. And I wanted to do Execution of Justice even if Emily couldn't direct it, because I also think the roles and the way the doubling happens, and having to have tracks with distinct characters is a great pedagogical opportunity.
Kavan, you're a member of the community of conservatory and fellows, and you know there is still much to go in our summer together, but you're coming, I'm sure, to know them quite intimately. I'm curious what you encountered in the rehearsal room as these actors met the material, and if there were any sort of anecdotes or just interesting ways that you noticed this material resonating with them, meeting them in their training process.
Yeah, I think a moment that really cracked open the play for the conservatory was when I think Emily said one of the traps of documentary theater is treating it like just everyday speak, because these are real people just sort of working at a quotidian level, but actually instead embracing the heightenedness of it, embracing the theatricality of it. And I think that gave the conservatory freedom to make big choices, to be really bold in their characterizations. And the play really started to sing in the room when that happened. It was a really beautiful moment to watch.
Thank you for sharing that. Emily, is there anything from the rehearsal process, a little anecdote or nugget or noticing that happened for you?
Oh my goodness. I work so intimately and personally with the actors, I sort of don't want to tell my favorite anecdotes. Yeah, they're right here, and there were so many incredible electric little connections. And with some of the actors, I don't have to say anything anymore. I just look at them, and we know what we're talking about, right? And so sometimes documentary theater and theater testimony won't let you lie. You cannot hide. Well, also if you work with me, you can't. So I want to say, well, I don't let them lie. I don't let them hide. I don't let them avoid the work. And so I work differently with every actor. I know Jade is exactly the same way. So that what I would say to Ayla about Marianne White would be very different in terms of how we're working than I would with Chris, or with Bailey, or with Julian, or with David. She has a different task. And she has to crack wide open. So I would say it was more similar working with Ayla as it was working with Zach, who plays Dan White, and has to completely crack open. But then Bailey, they all crack wide open at some point, right? So, because I do so much trauma work, I can't tell on anyone because it's too personal.
Very honorable. I'm sure there are many questions out here in our smart, curious audience, so I'm going to turn over my microphone. I'm done with my silly questions, and we're going to come to you. Holly, you've got the exercise shoes on today. Thank you.
I'm from San Francisco, so thank you for bringing this poem, or this poetic theater here. My question for you, Emily, is what differences did you bring to this particular production, which you seem to be very fond of and which I enjoyed quite a bit last night, that might have been different from a 1985 viewing? Obviously the audio-visual elements, which were so reality TV-ish. But did you change the text at all with your uncalled witnesses or something else that maybe wasn't in the version 40 years ago?
That's a great question. The answer is no.